The NATO summit in Vilnius is marred by memories of a tragic summit 15 years ago. It can be said that the ancestor of Russia's invasion of Ukraine was the NATO meeting 15 years ago. At a meeting of the Western Army in Bucharest, Romania in 2008, the leaders refused to give the former Soviet republics Georgia and Ukraine. The two countries have made a vague commitment to join forces in the future, but there are no plans for how or when that will happen. NATO heads of state and government will meet in Vilnius next week at a crucial moment for our transatlantic security. Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine continues. For 500 days, Moscow has brought death and destruction to the heart of Europe by trying to destroy Ukraine and divide NATO. Our conversation will send a clear message. Represents NATO troops. Article: Russia's crimes will not be rewarded. At the meeting, we will strengthen Ukraine and create a vision for its future. I hope the coalition leaders agree on 3 points that will bring Ukraine closer to NATO. We will first agree on a multi-year aid plan. Ensures full cooperation between the armed forces of Ukraine and NATO. The second is to improve the level of political relations. Article: was established by the NATO-Ukraine Council. Third, I hope that the leaders of the Commission will reaffirm that Ukraine will become a NATO member. Article: get together and discuss how to bring Ukraine closer to its goals. Friends committed €500 million to meet critical needs, including fuel, medical equipment, mining equipment and barges. We will also assist in the construction of Ukraine's security and defense sector, including military hospitals. We will help Ukraine transition from Soviet-era equipment and standards to NATO-era equipment and standards. President Zelensky will join us at the first meeting of the new NATO-Ukraine Council. This will be a platform for crisis counseling and decision-making. We all sit together as equals to solve security issues. At the meeting, we will take more important steps to strengthen our defense and defense. Chapter: with our new regional defenses chapter. Against two threats to our organizations, chapter: Russia and terrorism. A program for the North Atlantic and European Arctic. One in the middle, covering the Baltic Sea and Central Europe. And the Southern Program for the Mediterranean and Black Sea. NATO is preparing 300,000 soldiers for higher readiness to realize this plan. Includes air and naval battles. I hope leaders will adopt the defense production plan to meet demand, increase capacity, and improve cooperation. To achieve all this, we need to invest more. At the meeting, the Allies will identify a multi-target defense investment commitment to spend at least 2% of their total defense investment each year. Today we are releasing a new defense spending estimate. In 2023, European allies and Canada will actually grow by 8.3%. This is the biggest increase of the decade. Our defense spending has increased 9 years in a row. As a result, since we agreed on an investment protection agreement in 2014, European friends and Canada will invest an additional $450 billion. At that time, only our group of friends used 2% of GDP for defense. 11 teams met or exceeded the target this year. We expect this number to increase in the coming years. The leaders of Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and South Korea will attend the meeting. Because our security is global, not regional. So we work well together on issues such as cybersecurity, maritime security, and new technologies. We will host the European Union in Vilnius. Our cooperation has reached an unprecedented level and we promise to work more together. It will be Finland's first meeting as a NATO ally. We look forward to the upcoming participation of Sweden. Yesterday I met with senior officials from Turkey, Sweden, and Finland. Then, on Monday afternoon, I will meet with President Erdogan and Prime Minister Christensen in Vilnius. NATO has been the most powerful organization in history for nearly 75 years. The decisions we will take at the Vilnius meeting will enable us to continue to protect our people and interests. Now I am ready to answer your questions. NATO expert Ona Lungescu. Lithuania TV. Mindaugas Lokagalis, LRT. Mindaugas Lokagalis, from Lithuanian National Radio and TV, thank you for giving me the opportunity. I have two questions. First, Ukraine called the 2008 Bucharest Declaration a historic mistake. The Vilnius Declaration is different because in 2008 the leaders said that Ukraine would become a NATO member, and it looks set to repeat it in 2023. So what's the difference? Another question, have you heard from President Zelensky? Will he attend the meeting? Thank you. NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg. There are many differences. The main difference, of course, is that Ukraine has good relations with NATO, since NATO allies have been working closely with Ukraine for many years, especially since 2014. I also want the leaders, when they meet in Vilnius, to agree on a package that will bring Ukraine closer to NATO. In part by creating the NATO-Ukraine Council, our political platform for crisis discussions, joint decision-making and political cooperation. Strategic support, especially multi-year plans, also has a political reality, because by agreeing to support and help Ukraine in the long term and improve relations with NATO, we help Ukraine succeed and even move closer to NATO and NATO member states. I'm sure we'll eventually find a common solution to solve the specific ownership issue, but I won't go into details now because that's something we'll release when everything is in place. Conference. I look forward to welcoming President Zelensky at the meeting and inviting him to the first meeting of the NATO-Ukraine Council. Section. Florian Nuhan, ZDF. Thank you very much, Florian Nuhan from the German TV channel ZDF. Mr. The first question, Stoltenberg said, is when the US says it is considering sending missiles to Ukraine, and Ukraine has banned missile shipments from more than 120 countries. From a military standpoint, do you think this is a good idea? Does Ukraine need such ammunition? From a political point of view, do you think it is necessary to carry weapons and ammunition, which are prohibited for good reason? NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg. As an alliance, NATO has no position in the Convention on Cluster Munitions because many allies have signed it and many have not. The decision to supply Ukraine with weapons and military equipment rests solely with the allies. In other words, the government will decide this, not NATO as an alliance. We are facing a brutal war, and we must not forget that brutal violence is also involved in the victims we see every day using bombs or missiles by both sides. Russia uses rockets in its brutal war of using guns to invade other countries during Ukraine. Use it to protect yourself. The best way to end this terrible war is for President Putin and Russia to stop attacking other countries. It is also the best way to stop all the pain, injury and death caused by the many types of weapons we see on the battlefield every day. NATO Secretary General Vanna Lungescu. NTV, Turkey. Güldener Sonamat, Secretary General, NTV, Turkey. It can be said that yesterday's meeting in Sweden was a kind of ice deal between the Turkish side and the Swedish side. You say constructive. However, when we look at the words of the Turkish and Swedish foreign ministers, there are still differences. So how will this trend continue next Monday? What kind of heart, because you always say Turkey, but how can you give Sweden a heart so that they try to attack or at least let go of Turkey's worries? Thank you very much. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg. In my opinion, words like constructive and good are better than breaking the ice. Let me tell you about our meeting yesterday. It was a good meeting. It was a useful meeting and we were successful. I still believe we will finish, but there are still gaps to be filled. That's why I invited President Erdogan and Prime Minister Christensen to meet in Vilnius for a few days on Monday. We will come together with the three of us and sit down with our experts to see the differences, specific problems and details we see between the Swedish project and the Turkey project. When there are differences, they can now be overcome in this way, as with Sweden's final agreement on NATO. My message is that Sweden collectively fulfills its promise in Madrid this time. At the same time, I also know that Turkey has security problems, so we sit down and talk to them. Because we also know that there are serious security concerns because NATO friends want Sweden to become a full member as soon as possible. This is especially true for the Baltic states, which are highly valued by Sweden's membership. That's why I believe it's good for Sweden. It would be good for the entire Union, including the Baltic region, the Scandinavian region and Turkey, if Sweden joins as soon as possible. NATO spokesperson Ona Lungescu. Interfax Ukraine. Irina Summer, Interfax Ukraine. Thank you, Ona. Irina Summer, Interfax Ukraine News Agency. Regarding the clarification, I have a question for Mindaugas. I understand you can't talk about membership. But can you tell us how close your friends are to the words in Ukraine's membership declaration that will also satisfy Kyiv?